Mac Kids 101 here today. This is basically OS 10, and we saw a little thing about OS 9. So this is going to be how OS 10 is different than OS 9. First of all, there's system tray, basically icons up in this menu bar. Menu bar is actually a lot sleeker and it's square. There is a searchlight thing, and the thing that says the active application and whatnot is right here instead of on the right side. And we still have the file menu and the Apple button here. There's a fixed menu here under the Apple icon in the top left-hand corner here. And normally there wouldn't be. In OS 9 there is no menu bar. Because in there is a menu bar, but all these options, like there's About This Mac, and then everything else is your most recently used applications. The dock is always there, and you can always move it around. And whenever you minimize stuff, it goes into the dock. Plus, you can edit the dock, put stuff into the dock, and the dock has actual icons. The desktop is pretty much the same with Macintosh HD, etc. With the folders. Now, of course, the user system is different because there are actually users on the Mac. And log out, and, there's also force quit, the force quit stuff. And, yeah. And so that's useful. Don't forget that, also there's Searchlight, and Finder is a lot more advanced. Finder has its own Finder windows instead of Sherlock having to find stuff. I think Sherlock is actually still on the Mac. If you look, I think Sherlock is somewhere on OS 10 Tiger. So if you have Tiger, you have Sherlock. But in Leopard, they got rid of Sherlock. And yeah. So this is just different also because it has terminal, because it is Unix based, and it's a lot more modern, obviously, and it has a lot more hard disk space. My computer happens to have 250 gigabytes of hard drive space and a 2 gigabytes of RAM. My iMac, which runs OS 9, happens to have 300 megabytes of hard drive space and 64 megabytes of RAM. So those put together still isn't a gigabyte. So obviously the operating system on the Mac has to be smaller than the operating system, or on OS 9 has to be smaller than the operating system here. Also on the iMac, things are just, or in OS 9 in general, things are just so much simpler than with OS 10. Because now with OS 10, there are like a billion things you can set in system preferences, like speech. On the iMac, there are only a few things. Now on the iMac, you can also view your desktop as a list, not just by icons, and you can view them as buttons. Here, you can only view them as icons. Everything else is pretty much the same. Like the file system is built the same way. It's just now Apple has all their own software like Safari, TextEdit. Still can get Word for the Mac, but there's iWorks now. And then iMovie was in OS 9 somehow. They made it for OS 9, but in OS 10 it's much better. So that's very nice. So you probably all use OS 10. You probably know what it's like. But just to give you an idea, you can open a new window and it'll come up right away. When you open something from your desktop, it flings open, and when you're moving a window, it stays there. It doesn't turn into a box with no contents in it whenever you drag it. That's nice. My iMac that I showed you this on is actually from 2003. So that was only 5 years ago from 2008, which is when I'm doing this. So, Also, all the buttons are on the left side. Maximize wasn't there before. Minimize actually brings something down into the dock right here. And X closes it. Now this is a lot different because applications somehow manage to keep on running. Even when you close them, you have to quit them. So that's annoying. But yeah. That's actually pretty simple. So they're pretty similar except for the Unix factor that OS 10 is Unix and OS 9 isn't, and that now there's security with users. Multiple people can use the computer. I think the iMac is more of a personal computer than this, because the Mac is a lot more complicated than my iMac, because there's nothing to my iMac. It's a crappy file system, few applications. There's nothing you can really do to make it different than any other iMac. Sort of like the iPhone, unless you jailbreak. With the Mac, there are so many things you can do. And with Windows, you can just totally up and make Windows be totally different. You can make Windows look like a Mac. You can do anything. So that's OS 9 versus OS 10 part 2. Goodbye, life is short, and yeah, we yourself.